First on Radio 4, the climax of a truly epic migration. Flight of the Ospreys.
From the wild highlands of a Scotland summer to the lush mangrove forests of a mild Guinea winter, through the wetlands of Europe, the deserts of the Sahel and the meandering estuaries of the West African coastline, the 5,000-kilometre migration of Britain's ospreys is now at an end.
As soon as they leave, their lives are a bit of a mystery. We have dots on a map, but it's very different to following them and exploring the habitats that they're in as they're there.
And the Flight of the Osprey mission, travelling alongside them to find out what perils they face along the way, is at an end too.
There were tears of joy, of excitement. This was the kind of pinnacle of a very long journey for us.
It's December, and adventurer and conservationist Sacha Dench is back on British soil. After months of chatting to her through dodgy phone lines and patchy Zoom calls, I finally caught up with her, face to face. You are back in Devon. How does it feel to be home?
To be honest, it's a bit of a shock to the system, having been living with a crew for 4 months and suddenly being at home alone. Partly lovely, partly also a huge shock to the system.
And now you've been back for a bit and you've had a chance to sort of think about the journey from a distance. How are you feeling about the mission?
I'm feeling great about it. The expedition was a huge success. A key part for us is getting a chance to live amongst people along the flyway, for them to share with us the honest truth of what it's like trying to do conservation there, but also the realities of their lives. So to hear from the villagers in Dobire, for example, to have a guy stand up and say, actually, when it comes to wild birds, on s'en fout, which means we really couldn't care less. If we can't eat them, our lives are focused on feeding our families tomorrow and the day after. For him to be honest enough in saying that, to know that that's the reality of conservation in that area, gives us a much better chance of collaborating with them in the future.
Were there any big surprises from the trip? Any stories that you found that you really weren't expecting?
One of the biggest surprises was coming across helicopter spraying right over the top of protected areas in the middle of the migration season. Something I never would have thought would happen in Europe and in, for example, a Natura 2000 site. And it's legal. That's a big shock that we really need to look at. During this migration, Europe was suffering the biggest drought that it's ever seen before, which was leading to lots of fires all over the place. And I hadn't ever really understood beforehand that actually it's not just fires being near to a nesting site or a stopover site that might be a problem, but actually wide fire fronts create a smoke barrier to migration that can stop everything. So ospreys, for example, will, we now know, fly through even thick cloud on occasions, but nothing can fly through a big barrier of smoke.
And of the stories that you've seen, are there any that give you real hope?
I mean, the osprey in general is an inspiring story. The fact that within the space of a few decades across Europe, we've turned the situation around for the ospreys, have brought them back in the numbers they are now. And the fact that that has been done, not just by conservationists taking action, but people from all different walks of life, that for me has been one of the most inspiring stories. For example, eco-guards in different countries across Africa who do their environmental job for nothing, but they carry on doing it because it's their local wildlife. That for me has also been really impressive.
As the team have been following the ospreys, so people at home have been following the story. Checking the team's updates on social media, monitoring 4K's progress on a map, or indeed listening in to this programme. All along the flyway, people are getting hooked on ospreys.
I got into them in 2014.
Winnie, just outside of Edinburgh, follows various UK nest cams, set up to give us a peek into their world.
I had been in hospital, came home, wasn't very fit, so started watching ospreys on these webcams, and the stuff I learned was absolutely unbelievable. You know, they showed you when the egg cracked and when the chick came out. It's just wonderful. I'm absolutely crazy about ospreys.
So how much time would you say you spend watching the cams then?
A lot. In a day, oh dearie me. Many, many hours I spend watching ospreys. I just absolutely love them.
Have you been following the expedition?
Oh yes, when they said they were following one, I thought, goodness me. I never thought for a minute they were going to find 4K. I thought, oh, the chances of that happening. They've done so well. I'd have done anything to go on that journey with Sacha.
Meanwhile, in Spain, a keen amateur photographer called Eugenio Garcia heard that Glenn, that adventurous satellite-tagged juvenile whose maiden migration has kept us all on the edge of our seats, was passing through his home of Galicia. Eugenio did a 400-kilometre round trip to see if he could photograph him.
I decided to go there to take a look if I could find him. I was during 2 hours going through the river trying to find him, but I couldn't. It's not easy to find him. A large forest crossed by the river, clear water, plenty of trouts, almost a paradise. But I couldn't find him.
And if Glenn comes back to Galicia on his way back to the UK in spring, will you try and photograph him again?
That's absolutely for sure. I'll do it.
And some Osprey fans have been inspired to do even more. The Torridge estuary flows out to the sea from the North Devon coast. Ospreys pass through here on their migration routes and sometimes fish, but they don't nest. Retired builder John has been inspired to do something about it.
Yeah, it's just something I always wanted to do anyway, to see the ospreys actually nest here. I understand they used to be indigenous species 200 years ago here. So if it happens, it'll be the first time for the southwest.
So how did you get from builder to osprey nest builder?
Always interested in bird life, British bird life. And recently I went up to Scotland to see the eagles. Always like birds of prey. And on my return, I thought, let's go across to Rutland, where the ospreys are. And I said, I'd like to build one of them poles. And I collected all the branches and that and tried to build a nest like an osprey would.
Ospreys need a wide open platform atop a very high pole for their nests. On the website of the Roy Dennis Foundation, there are instructions on how to build one. It takes you through it, step by step.
It couldn't have been better. It just showed me exactly what to do. It's 8 inch by 2 inches around. It's 3 foot square. Then I put some mesh on it. Then I put a side on it. And then I just screwed together all these oak branches. So I put a thing on Facebook that said, anybody know where I can get an electricity pole? A friend of mine came on, he said, well, so-and-so's got a load of them in his yard. Have a word with him. Well, that guy donated one to me. And then we just fitted it on the actual pole and lifted it all up in one go. And it all went well. Because it could have been a disaster, because it's a big thing. It's 40 foot high, you know. So it's up there now, and it's lined with a bit of softer material. And just hoping for the best, yeah. It might never happen, I don't know. Yes. But unless I put it up, I won't know.
You're hoping if you build it, then they will come.
Well, it's been on there. The osprey went up on the nest.
Already?
This autumn.
Okay.
It stayed here for 3 weeks. There was 2 ospreys here. Yeah, I didn't see it, but one of the guys down there, the bird watchers, he said, look, it's visited your pole. It was on top.
Fingers crossed. Like you said, they're already using the nest, though, so it's a good sign.
Yes. It'd be great if we can pull it off. If I can see an osprey actually nesting there, that would make it for me. Yeah. Because they're fantastic birds.
In many places, we think the limiting factor for ospreys returning is the lack of suitable nest platforms. So if people can build them, that can make all the difference.
Yeah. It's,
Any tips for anybody else who is deciding to build an osprey nest?
Come and see me.
Sacha has been front and centre of this conservation adventure. But she's had a huge team behind her the whole way, sharing the driving, fixing up the vehicles, cooking, camping and working together for 4.5 long months on the road. And along the way, they've encountered a lot more wildlife than just the ospreys.
Animals everywhere.
Birds, mammals, insects, everything, crocodile.
Friendly people.
Definitely, I think the northern bald ibis, because they just came right so close that it was just so cool to see.
The tiramisu, I learned about the tiramisu eagles.
Short-toed snake eagles, also called tiramisus, because they've got like a tiramisu pattern.
And it's just stuck, and I was like, tiramisu, tiramisu.
For me, it was just a big change in colour. Everything had gone from being like yellow and brown, and then we suddenly entered this national park, and everything was just green and blue, and it was
Some call it Nairobi fly, some call it the blister beetle. They release this really powerful acid. Some say it's stronger than cobra's venom. I have a big one on my neck, but I'm kind of grateful I didn't get it in my eye like both of you.
We were right down by the water, but there were all these burrows of these fiddler crabs. They were absolutely massive, and at night they'd just suddenly come out, and there were just like hundreds just wandering around the camp, and if I opened my tent door, suddenly all these crabs would just start piling in.
Into the tent?
Yeah, into the tent.
If you went down by the shore, it was difficult to walk and not step on them because there was just so many of them. It was a big blanket of crabs.
One tried to fight Tim.
I think Tim tried to fight the crab. People we met along the way are just like gorgeous, fabulous people, but all enthusiastic, like devoted people. Definitely one of my favorite.
The Great Migration South, both for the Ospreys and for you and your expedition buddies, is now over. But this isn't the end of the project, is it? What's next for the Fly to the Osprey project?
No, this isn't the end of the project. So we now have a film to put together to bring to life the journey of the birds, but also the lives and the situations of people doing conservation all along the flyway. The plan is next year, once we have the film done, to do the return migration with film showings in all the different countries. We will have a different aim in each country, but that might include wanting to meet with ministers. It might include trying to gather communities together to back the one person that's doing something. It might include trying to raise the funds to build a research station that is really needed. We can see where are the really critical areas where a little bit of change could have a massive impact. So that's what we'll be focusing from now. And one of the key outcomes from showing the films will hopefully be that we'll inspire a load more people. That could be people in power, but it could be an individual who has an idea and goes, yes, like John says, well, if the problem is lack of big trees here, I think I can make a big tree. That's what we hope the film will do, inspire a load more people to step up, because we can't leave it just to a few conservationists along the flyway. We need a load more people inspired to step up.
The mission has one final legacy. A new name for one of the birds we've been following the whole way. 4K. 4K is a very beloved bird, but most people agree he has a very boring name.
4K is a terrible name for a bird. I think scientists go through phases, don't they, of deciding, can we or can we not give animals human-type names.
The people in Dobiray, the small fishing village in Guinea, which is closest to his territory, decided he needed a new one. One which honours his presence there with them through the long winter months. They named him after the village, Dobiray.
The mayor of the area stood up and he said, I think we should name this bird Dobiray. This is our bird as much as your bird. Can you deal with that?
There's something lovely about him saying that, isn't it? Because we think of them as a Rutland water bird or maybe a bird from the Scottish Islands, but they're not. They are Dobiray birds. They are Guinea birds. At every point along this journey, they belong there just as much as anywhere else.
Yeah, and that's exactly it. Some of them said, if this bird was born in the UK, then it's a UK bird. Do we have birds here in Guinea? And I said, no, these are like the birds. They wouldn't survive if they wasn't here. They belong as much to the people of Dobiray in the village as they do to us. It is crazy, the connections, and I think it was kind of as mind-blowing to us as it was to them.
Fly to the Ospreys was produced in Bristol by Emily Knight and Alasdair Cross.